Hi, my name's Marcus Keating and this is Untitled Bab, a blog about art in Birmingham. This morning I am at Margaret Street Art School with three master's students who are getting prepared for their master's show in a few weeks. I've got Emily Scarrett, Clive Roberts and Betsy Bradley. So thanks for all getting together and coming this morning.
Thanks for coming.
We've sort of just been chatting really briefly. We had a bit of a walk around the art school talking about experiences of the art school. I stopped at my undergraduate degree, so I did 3 years and then I decided that was enough for me, but clearly not for you guys. So what's kind of sustained your interest in staying in postgraduate study?
Well, for me, I did my undergraduate at Brighton, and then I had a 2-year gap. I wanted a gap at that point, I think, to just experience the real world.
Yeah.
And I kept my practice going throughout that time and was adamant that I would kind of be an artist, but I guess earn money on the side. And then I got to a point where I just really craved just purely time to make my work and be around other artists. So
it's really difficult going from a really tight structure to no structure at all in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
How did you find that 2-year break? And were you in Brighton that time?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I actually found it really liberating at first because I realised when I was making work, I had to make it from home because that's the only space I had.
Yeah.
I realised that I could do whatever I wanted, and on my degree, obviously, you end up handling a bit to the tutors that are there and like taking their opinion as like be all
gospel.
Yeah. So at first, I kind of felt like quite free, like I could do anything, and then it just got a bit lonely, I guess, and wasn't enough conversation happening. So.
Yeah, that's actually something that I still struggle with. I graduated in 2005, a long time ago, and I still struggle with that assumed feedback. You kind of toil away in your studio, and there still is that sort of thing where you are very isolated, but needing that conversation to go forward, and there just isn't that a lot of the time. Have you all had breaks from study in between?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Clive, what was your?
See, I was teaching for 10 years.
Oh, right.
And so I was teaching art and technology.
Secondary?
Middle school.
Right, okay. Yeah, that's what I went into straight after art school as well. I went into education. Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to take a break from that, so I decided to return to education. And all the things that I never got around to doing, I've kind of done something else instead.
Yeah. So what does your practice look like?
It's turned into a performance. So I've been recruiting people and dancing around the town.
Yeah.
And, taking the art out of the building.
Do you think your education into education has kind of led that in any way?
It's been a constant sort of amazing sort of revelation that what I'm doing is sort of completely unexpected.
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of embracing that, really.
Yeah. Because for me, there was this kind of connection between teaching and learning, and those constant things that you're constantly teaching and you're constantly learning. So for me, that break was kind of necessary into some, to study something kind of different in a way. And so you've had a bit of a break as well, Emily?
Yeah, I think me and Betsy had about the same amount of time. So I graduated from here in 2013, and then I don't know, had a break, sort of messed around, and then I just really wanted to come back. I think it's a bit of a fairy tale when you're here though, because you've just got your studio and you've got all the other people, but you're allowed to do it, and there's nothing saying, well, you should be working, or I don't know. It's and then we've got to go back in the real world again.
Yeah. And it's that thing about making and then showing and having a body of people there that are just on hand to kind of come and be a part of a performance or to come and give feedback or whatever. And yeah, that kind of, it doesn't stop. It just there are different avenues for it. I mean, in Birmingham, I've noticed there are lots of application-based sign-up groups, critique groups and that kind of thing. I think there's about 3 different crit groups that I know of at the moment. There's one running at Artefact that is run by Pete Ashton, and Thomas Kilby runs one at Strix. Antonio Roberts runs one for Black Hole Club, and I'm assuming there's probably an ESP one as part of Eastside Projects as well. So they're sort of there, but it's a lot of kind of digging and scraping and finding, and
it's also sort of more professional. When you're here, you can tell that you jog in bottoms and go, yeah, I did this. Whereas you've got to sort of fill out an application and then put a PowerPoint together or however you're going to present it, and it's a completely different world to just, even if it's casual, to being here. Here you sort of expect it, but when you're outside, it's hopefully a way to gain opportunities. That's how you've got to view it.
Yeah. I'm not sure that this prepares you completely for that kind of side of it, like applications and things, because you are in such a bubble of easiness.
Yeah, mine certainly didn't. Oh, in a way, I mean, there was 2 galleries as part of the art school that you had to apply, and the vast majority of students applied at some stage. So people kind of knew the format, but really, I mean, there was no, in terms of lectures and that kind of thing, or tutes or discussions about how to get funding or anything that sort of was pretty thin on the ground. And that's another thing that I've noticed here in Birmingham, is that funding is key to the majority of artists that I've spoken to, getting external funding and applying for things. I mean, I know people that have been putting together applications for huge funding for like 6 months. These are it's almost like a full-time job in itself.
I think this school has got some amazing opportunities in terms of funding. Well, for the course anyway, because they have bursaries and
right.
I don't know. I just feel like Birmingham in general has a lot more opportunities that are kind of welcomed to you compared to maybe other places where it's just so elitist and kind of impossible to get a foot in.
Yeah,
that's one good thing.
Yeah, definitely. I lived in London for 3 years, and there was just, unless you were a student at Slade or Central St Martin's, there's no foot in the door. There's no sort of, it is about working through those art school channels. So if you're not part of that art school, and it is a very privileged society, if you're not part of that, then what kind of opportunities do you have? But I think you're right. Birmingham does afford more than other cities. So what sort of, like, once you guys all finish up, what kind of avenues do you all want to take?
As you say, it's like trying to find those opportunities and spending time sort of just trying to hunt those out is going to be quite a big task in itself, I think.
Yeah.
Once you've found them, then you can take the next step, I suppose. It's creating those networks and joining those networks to be able to find those opportunities.
Yeah. There doesn't seem to be any centralised space for those things just yet. What were you going to say?
It's all sort of, it's either very DIY or something that you can't reach, like Saatchi Gallery sort of, that's too far away, that's nothing that I can get to. And then you've got this sort of DIY thing, but you're really aware that everyone has jobs to fund that. That's not a career, that's it's sort of like a hobby, but a CV building hobby.
Yeah. So for full-time career artists, it's really looking at how you use your time to fund your projects rather than, I mean, are there kind of gallery stables that you know of even outside of Birmingham that's a sort of career path forward for some people, or how does it? I don't even know how it works from that perspective.
To be honest, no, I don't know how artists end up with gallery support. I don't really know if the artist gets approached.
Yeah.
I've never heard of like sort of applying to a gallery to be represented. That's not something I've ever heard of. So I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like that's something we probably should have been told. But yeah, it's just something that's you don't understand, I suppose.
We're in a funny city. Like I was talking to, do you guys know Reese from Rope Projects, who's also set up International New School? I only met him just yesterday, but I went to Artist Supermarket that he's set up, and it's great. It's got heaps of zines and artist books and stuff. It's fantastic. But we were talking about how, Birmingham as as the second city, as they say, we're in this early period of being an artist city where we've got all these opportunities, all these really cheap spaces, fantastic kind of rents and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's we're cutting our own paths. There's no clear way forward. Whereas all of these other cities have had established pathways for years and years and years. So we've got these great opportunities to kind of create our own. But it's like, holy shit, what direction do we even go in? And then I guess with all the new developments in the city and HS2, everything's shifting and moving constantly. So I guess in terms of lecturer and tutor support, in terms of what happens next for our city is probably one of those things that are too difficult to discuss at this point.
I think whereas in London it's sort of the structure's built from the art schools, our art school dips into the structure of Birmingham. Like I think we're slowly getting more involved in like Digbeth First Fridays or whatever, but they're definitely not from Birmingham School of Art based artists. They're sort of artists from all over's built that, and now the school's getting more involved in that. Yeah. Whereas London, it would all be people from Slade and RCA who've created this thing for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And that's how you get involved, by being one of them.
Melbourne's kind of the same actually. A lot of the artist-run initiatives have been set up by groups of students that have been studying together, develop those connections and networks, and then from there set up things. So it's almost sort of like in Melbourne there are 3 major art schools. So I don't like using the word competition, but there almost is that sort of healthy competition of what gets produced at what schools, under who, under which lecturers and tutors. So I don't know. There's something kind of different because there's only one art school here in Birmingham. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. University of Birmingham only does art history. It doesn't do like practice. And Aston, I assume no.
But the School of Art has been under various sort of umbrellas. It was the School of Art to begin with, and now it's VCU, but it was Polytechnics, wasn't it?
I think so.
Is that right? It's had a few rebranding.
So it was the first purpose-built art school, fact of the day. So
this one here?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So it was built to be an art school.
And it's still in use as an art school.
Wow. It was also used during the Second World War for other things as well. Is that right? I read something a little while ago, but so that was built as an art school before that happened, presumably. I mean, it's certainly a pretty grand building. It's amazing. Are you guys worried about leaving now that you've kind of had your time, or are you thinking about extra study, or?
I'm worried about funding. Obviously, that is the main thing. I guess I will have to get a job. I've been lucky enough not to have to work during this year, which has been amazing. But I will have to get a job, and just knowing what kind of job is either one that isn't maybe creative, but just funds me purely and then gives me time to make my work, or something that is more relevant.
And this is what video stores were good for 10 years ago, funding artists.
Yeah.
You've got, so Betsy has a, do you want to talk about your Grand Union?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've got a residency with Grand Union, which is brilliant. It's for a year. It seems kind of like a dream. Really, it's not really real to me yet, but that would be amazing. It's a shared space with 3 other artists.
And then will they all be from the master's program here?
I think it's open to there'll be graduates from Birmingham City University from like the last 5 years.
Okay.
But it's not just the art courses, it's open to like I think English students or like School of
Oh,
Jewellery
right,
or
okay, yeah.
like all the other creative courses apply. So
Yeah.
it's a mixture of people.
I guess you've got enough on your plate between now and the end of this month before you're considering what you even might use that time for.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I actually feel really kind of right in the middle of stuff at the moment, so I'm kind of, I could easily just carry on and kind of ignore this exhibition, but kind of, hopefully I can just get in the studio there.
It's probably a nice way to be actually, because sometimes it's really difficult to sort of feel like you're at the end of something and you present it and you show it, you have this kind of big show,
Yeah.
and then there's that sort of like stumbling moment of, I'm not ready to start yet kind of thing.
Yeah.
So actually doing something in between that overlaps both of those things actually is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
So what will you be showing for the graduate show?
I haven't worked it out yet, but I've got lots of large scale paintings and then these kind of sculptures which are very new to me really. They're kind of, they started off as these kind of strange tools for painting and then they kind of become art objects in themselves, and I want to kind of, I guess it'll be more of an installation with the paintings and tools kind of interacting in the space.
Yeah. I had a bit of a sneak peek. There was some pretty interesting stuff going on, very gestural.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Clive, what will you be? Will yours be a performance?
It's going to be a video of a performance, and costumes as well are going to be displayed. The whole space is sort of an exhibition archive of what I've done this year, really.
So in terms of like performance stuff, because Emily and I have talked about this a little bit before, moving into performance, have you found there have been a lot of people that you can kind of talk to, or has it felt kind of really fresh, starting from scratch?
It's been really interesting because Betsy enjoyed it and Emily didn't.
Is that right?
She was given every opportunity.
The stars aligned against me.
But no, it was a really interesting, sort of interactive, sort of collaborative way of working, which I've never done before.
Yeah.
It turned out to be a really rich sort of experience.
Do you think in terms of art school? I mean, ours was broken up. So we had a painting department that was separate from the sculpture department, and then we had a dance department that was also separate, and fashion, and so everyone was kind of kept separate. And I guess that meant that the teaching and the research could be really honed, I suppose. But when you're working with students, working with all different mediums constantly around you, have you found it easy to get sort of support for your own research into these things?
Yes and no. I mean, there is this big divide between the Marg Street building and the rest of the university alongside. So the theory goes that you can use both facilities, and in practice it's a lot more challenging if you want to push it in that way. But technicians and staff are always really useful and always really helpful. And if you have a question, they'll help you out as much as they can.
Because I think even as a teacher myself, it's really difficult to not instill your own bias onto things. So when you have, when you're at the mercy of the lecturers that you've got, it really kind of comes down to either them being completely objective about things, or just desperately hoping that you get someone with similar interests as you. And I've seen graduate shows where I've been aware of the lecturers who have been doing sessional work or whatever, and you see some of the work that's produced, and you just think, that's just like that kind of you can't just create mini-me's, like. So that's a really difficult thing. Also, as an artist, to separate those influences from your own influences. Kind of cutting and pasting those bits of your own work.
I think perhaps because we've all had a break from full-time education, then we've got that bit of extra perspective about it.
Yeah.
If you carry straight on, maybe that would be, you'd be more likely to be railroaded by.
Yeah. Probably a lot less so than undergraduate students. because you do have that, and you've got that slight extra time spent where you understand your own practice a little bit more.
Mm.
I think we're more cynical now, but I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody tells us, and you know intuitively that's not what the way for your work to go,
Yeah.
then you just fuck it off.
Yeah,
You're just
yeah.
like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And like smile and nod and then don't do it because
Yeah.
you know that that's not the right thing to do. Whereas in BA, you're like, oh no, what do I have to change everything? Or, yeah, now we're just like, okay, thank you. Yeah.
That's a difficult thing also outside of art school, I find as well, is that, you know, you come across, you know, curators and people that are part of galleries that you really admire, that you can really see a very defined notion of what they like in those spaces, and it's really difficult to not fit your work into those things and to remain kind of, I guess, you know, true to what your own practice and who you kind of want, what you want to be producing at that point in time. That's tough.
Especially when you get, it's really good because we've had loads of like visiting lecturers who've done personal tutorials and things like that, but they all give you such different feedback that if you followed all of them, you just have a mess.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of pick and choose what you think is a good idea rather than just pleasing the crowd, I suppose.
It's honing those kind of gut instincts, isn't it? You know, intuition side of things.
Yeah.
So what do you both, Emily and Clive? I don't know what I was going to call you on. What do you sort of hope for the next 12 months, kind of after you finish? What, have you got any plans?
It's kind of getting the balance, because when I was teaching, I had no time to do my own stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to, because all your time's taken up with teaching, and then I've spent a year only doing my own stuff. So if there was some, you know, book that tells me how to get the balance right.
No, there isn't. I work part-time, and that helps. But I've not had an art practice for about 4 years while I was teaching full-time, and that just drove me to insanity. And it wasn't really until I kind of had a bit of a moment, a bit of a break, where I was like, you know, these things have to work in unison now. I've got to be able to split my time a little bit more effectively. But in terms of studios and stuff, have you both kind of, are you interested in getting studios anywhere, or?
In theory, yes. Money-wise, we will see.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of people that are kind of applying for funding specifically to fund studio rent, and I think that's you know, something that's happening more often these days.
Yeah, I think you have to sort of try and find at least one opportunity just to sort of, you need the boost, don't you? Because we spent a year as like little balls of like, oh, potential, and we're going to do all this mad stuff when we leave, but then you get closer and you're like, oh God, what is this? What is happening now? But sort of, I think, yeah, you just sort of have to find something that will occupy you for a year, and then you're on the road, really, aren't you? You have to keep.
Yeah, it's also having that reflection time as well to sort of stop, because it is a bit of a, you know, railroad kind of thing, you know, this sort of, the steam engine stops at the end of education. It's like, okay, you know, I need a bit of a breather to kind of get a bit of perspective and see what's happening. And yeah, what will you be producing for the final show?
I guess I sort of find objects and that interest me and run with them. So this one I've got a lot of objects that are like fortune telling, or so like novelty items that actually mean nothing.
I think I saw the oversized fish, which was, I opened up my sketchbook from a few months back, and I was like, damn it, she got there first.
Really?
yeah.
Yes.
And I saw the fortune telling, the fortune crackers.
Yeah, so I've got those. I have a lucky cat in the post, but I had one that turned up with no arm, so
it couldn't
less lucky cat. Yeah, so all sort of things that are meant to mean something, but really mean absolutely nothing, and you see maybe once a year. I'm quite interested in that, and sort of excess of novelty and how that changes something. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting as an artist, because what we tend to do usually is we place value onto something that doesn't have a great deal of value. You know, it's like that idea the moment you put something on the plinth, you know, and here you're kind of taking it back, something that has value, and erasing that value a little bit.
Yeah, and how when you see something that costs like probably pennies, how it's like joy to have a fortune cookie at the end of your Chinese takeaway, but if you have more than one, it's the worst thing ever. It's just the worst thing
Conflicting
ever.
horoscopes.
Nice, aren't they?
No, they're really unpleasant if you have more than one. I can vouch.
So what's the record?
I had 30.
3-0.
I was aiming for 200, but
Right.
I couldn't.
It's like a kid with a bag of Haribo.
Yeah, it was the worst day of my life.
You were lucky today, weren't you?
Yeah, it wasn't pleasant.
Well, on the blog, I've got a link section which I've got a whole bunch. I mean, I keep adding to it because I keep finding new spaces in Birmingham and new opportunities and stuff. So I keep adding to that. So if anyone's kind of listening and is interested in finding out a little bit more about some of these other spaces, click away. And I'll add your details or whatever, if you've got any websites or Instagram pages or whatever, I'll put them at the bottom of this blog so you can see some of the work beforehand, or even just an interest in these artists' work. But congratulations and good luck for the install of the show. It opens
4th of September.
Yeah, 4th of September, which is a Tuesday, is that right?
Yeah, and the private view is that evening, starting 5.
Yeah, 5 till 8.
5 till 8, and then it's open until I think the 12th. Yeah.
That's great, that's a good amount of time. And I guess more details are on the art school website as well.
We have our
Yeah.
website for the show.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And is that accessible? Oh, well, I can put it on the bottom. If Emily, you email it to me, I can put it on the bottom of this blog. Fantastic. Thanks a lot for that. That's great.
Thank you.
And I'll speak to you soon.